The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched so far that the walls disappeared into a soft blue haze. Thousands of seats filled the massive space, arranged in circular tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling made of transparent crystal. Through it, the stars shone bright and cold. Representatives from 862 different species sat in those seats, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, and some had bodies made of living stone or pure energy contained in mechanical shells. Jiwan sat in the human section with her datapad resting on her lap. She wore a simple dark blue suit, the official uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Next to her sat Minho, a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes who had served on the council for 12 years. On her other side was Hana, younger than both of them, still idealistic enough to believe that facts and evidence could change minds. The three of them had reviewed the agenda that morning over breakfast. Item 7 had caught their attention immediately. It was titled, Motion to Reclassify Member Status, Humanity. The proposal had been submitted by the Velkari Empire and co-signed by 6 other senior species. Jiwan had read it 3 times, trying to understand the reasoning. The words were carefully chosen, diplomatically vague. Humans were too unpredictable, too aggressive, too influential for such a young species. The motion proposed changing Earth's status from full member to probationary contributor. Minho had laughed when he first read it. But there was no humor in the sound. Hana had started pulling together data, charts showing everything humanity had contributed over the past 40 years. Medical technology that had saved billions of lives, agricultural techniques that had turned barren worlds into gardens, military vessels that had protected council space from pirates and hostile forces, trade agreements that had enriched dozens of species. Now they sat and waited as the council worked through the agenda. Item 1 was a dispute over mining rights in the Kepler sector. Item 2 concerned trade tariffs. Item 3 was about environmental standards. The hours dragged on. Representatives gave speeches that said very little. Others slept in their seats, their translators still humming softly. When item 7 finally came up, Jiwan felt Hana tense beside her. The council speaker, Kor then, announced the motion in his resonating crystal voice. He was 12 feet tall, his body formed from interlocking geometric shapes that glowed with inner light. He had been speaker for 60 years, and had probably forgotten more about politics than Jiwan would ever know. High Minister Kelvar of the Velkari rose to present the motion. The Velkari looked like bipedal wolves with silver fur and golden eyes. They were one of the oldest species in the council, one of the founding members. Kelvar spoke smoothly about the need for proper oversight of younger species. He used words like guidance, and maturation period, and structured development. He never once mentioned any specific incident or problem. It was all abstract concerns and careful implications. Jiwan pressed the button to request the floor. A small light appeared above the human section. Kor then looked at it, then looked away. He called on the Trin representative instead, who voiced support for the motion. Then, the Halcyon representative spoke, expressing concerns but ultimately supporting the proposal. Jiwan pressed the button again. The light blinked steadily. Kor then called on 3 more species. All voiced support, or mild objections, that changed nothing. Minho submitted a formal objection through the official channels. It appeared on the main display for exactly 5 seconds, before Kor then dismissed it as procedurally premature. The vote hadn't happened yet, so there was nothing to object to. Hana stood up, holding her datapad high. She started to speak, her voice amplified by the chamber's systems. She talked about the medical stations Earth had built on 15 worlds, the rescue operations human ships had conducted, the food shipments during famines, the schools and hospitals and research facilities. Kor then's voice cut through hers like a blade. The representative from Earth is out of order. We are not debating contributions. We are discussing appropriate classification status. The chair does not recognize the Earth delegation at this time. Hana's voice cut off as her microphone deactivated. She stood there for a moment, her datapad still raised, then slowly sat down. The vote was called. The display showed the results in real time. Green lights for yes, red lights for no, yellow lights for abstention. The green lights spread across the chamber like a wave. Some sections stayed dark, refusing to participate. A few, scattered red lights appeared here and there. The final count appeared on the main display. 847 in favor. 12 against. 3 abstentions. Ji-won sat very still. She felt Minho's hand on her shoulder. A brief squeeze of solidarity. Hana was crying quietly, trying to hide it. The chamber moved on immediately. Item 8 was about updating safety protocols for faster-than-light travel. The speaker was already calling on the first representative when Ji-won stood up. She didn't rush. She carefully gathered her datapad and her notes. She closed her briefcase with a soft click that somehow seemed loud in her ears. Minho and Hana stood with her. Around them, other human representatives were doing the same. There were 53 humans in the chamber that day. All of them stood. All of them gathered their belongings. Ji-won walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor. Behind her, she heard the other humans following. Nobody spoke. There were no dramatic declarations or angry speeches. They simply walked. Some representatives glanced their way. Most didn't bother. The Dendari counselor, Venera, watched them leave with something that might have been concern in her large eyes. The Trin representative, Dreven, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Kor then continued with item 8 as if nothing was happening. His crystalline voice filled the chamber, discussing technical specifications and safety margins. By the time the human delegation reached the massive doors, he was calling for a vote on the new protocols. Ji-won walked out into the corridor beyond. The doors closed behind the last human representative with a soft hiss. Through the thick walls, she could still hear the muffled sounds of the council continuing its business. She looked at Minho and Hana, then at the other humans gathered in the corridor. 53 faces, looking back at her, waiting for guidance. "Contact Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them we're coming home." The message reached every human outpost in council space within 12 hours. It was short and direct. All personnel were to conclude their current assignments in an orderly manner and return to human-controlled territory. No exceptions. No delays. Ambassador Junho received the message while sitting in his office on Velmar Station. The office had a window that looked out over the main trade plaza, where merchants from 100 different worlds conducted business. He had worked here for 6 years, building relationships, negotiating contracts, solving problems. He knew the names of the station administrator's children. He had attended the wedding of the Trin trade minister. He had a favorite restaurant in the lower levels where they made something almost like noodles. He scheduled a meeting with station administrator Feltok for the next morning. Feltok was a halcyon. Tall and thin, with skin that shifted colors based on his mood. Right now it was a confused mixture of blue and orange. "I don't understand," Feltok said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard trade language. "Is this about the council vote? Surely Earth will appeal the decision." Junho shook his head. "We are closing our commercial offices here. All human businesses operating on Velmar Station will conclude their operations within the next 30 days. 30 days? Ambassador, that's not possible. The contracts alone will take months to properly transfer. And the trade agreements, we will honor all existing contracts," Junho said. "But we will not be renewing them or entering into new ones. Earth is no longer a full member of the Council. It would be inappropriate for us to maintain such a significant presence in Council space." Feltok's skin flushed a deep red. "This is insane. Do you know how much revenue human trade generates for this station? You're cutting off your nose to spite your face." "We are simply accepting the Council's decision," Junho replied. "We were told, in essence, that we are not valued as full partners. We are acting accordingly." He left Feltok's office with the administrator still sputtering protests. Over the next week, Junho supervised the closure of Earth's commercial operations on Velmar Station. There were 43 human-owned businesses and another 112 that were joint ventures. The humans didn't break contracts or sabotage anything. They simply didn't renew. They didn't extend. They withdrew. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out in different ways. On the agricultural world of Aaron 7, Suna stood in the middle of a field that stretched to the horizon. The crops were a hybrid she had developed herself, combining Earth wheat with native Aaronite grains. They grew in the planet's difficult soil and survived the unpredictable weather patterns. They had turned Aaron 7 from a struggling colony into a breadbasket that fed 6 neighboring systems. The Aaronite farmers stood around her in a semicircle. Their leader, a weathered old farmer named Tok, was crying. The Aaronites didn't cry the way humans did, but the blue fluid leaking from his eye membranes meant the same thing. "Please," Tok said. "You cannot leave. The harvest is in 2 months. Who will help us?" Suna felt her heart break a little. She had lived on Aaron 7 for 8 years. These people were her friends. "I'm leaving all our research data," she said. "Everything is documented. The seed banks are full. The irrigation systems are all automated. You should be fine." "Should be?" Tok's voice cracked. "We don't understand half of what you built. When something breaks, what do we do? The council can send agricultural experts from other species," Suna said, though even as she said it, she doubted it. The Velkari had agricultural knowledge, but it was different from human methods. The Trin grew their food in vats. The Halcyon barely needed to eat at all. She and her team of 32 researchers packed up their personal belongings. They left the labs fully stocked. They left the equipment running. They left detailed manuals and instructional videos. Then they boarded their shuttle and left. Suna watched Aaron 7 shrink in the viewport until it was just another star. She wondered if she would ever see it again. Captain Taeyong stood on the bridge of the UESS Horizon's shield and read the recall order for the 3rd time. His ship was a destroyer, fast and well-armed, part of the Council's 3rd Defense Fleet. For 8 years, his crew had patrolled the frontier sectors, fighting pirates and deterring hostile forces. They had saved countless lives. They had earned commendations from 4 different species. His first officer, a woman named Unji, stood beside him. "Sir, the Trin are asking for a meeting. Fleet Commander Drevin wants to know why we're leaving," Taeyong sighed. Drevin was a good officer and a better friend. They had fought together in the Battle of Kepler Station, holding off raiders until reinforcements arrived. Drevin had saved Taeyong's life during that fight, dragging him back to cover while his leg bled from a plasma burn. He met Drevin in the conference room of the Trin flagship. Drevin looked like a bipedal crocodile, covered in brown and green scales, with eyes that could see in the infrared spectrum. He was worried. Taeyong could tell from the way his tail moved. "Why?" Drevin asked simply. "Is it the vote? We can fix that. I can talk to the council. Get them to reconsider." "It's already done," Taeyong said. "The council made its decision. We're respecting it. By leaving?" "Taeyong, we need you out here. Pirate activity has been increasing in the Outer Rim. Intelligence suggests the Korthak Syndicate is planning something big. We need every ship we can get." "Then perhaps the council should have thought of that before the vote," Taeyong said quietly. "We were asked to step back, so we are stepping back." Drevin stared at him. "This is madness. You humans are too proud for your own good." "Maybe," Taeyong said. "Or maybe we just know our worth." He shook Drevin's hand, the human gesture that the Trin had learned to appreciate. Then he returned to his ship and gave the order to set course for Earth. Across 16 sectors, human ships departed. Medical teams packed up their equipment and left their posts. Diplomats closed their embassies. Teachers at council schools resigned. Engineers working on joint projects submitted their final reports and went home. They didn't steal anything. They didn't destroy anything. They left everything in working order. Files organized. Transitions documented. They were professional to the last. But they left. The council noticed, of course. Reports came in from dozens of stations and worlds. Humans were withdrawing. But most council members assumed it was temporary. The humans were upset, yes. But they would cool down. They would realize they needed the council more than the council needed them. They would come back. High Minister Kelvar said as much in a statement to the council press. We understand Earth is disappointed with the recent vote, but we are confident they will see reason. The Galactic Council has stood for 1,000 years. It will stand for 1,000 more, with or without humanity. The statement was broadcast across council space. On Earth, people watched it and said nothing. They were too busy welcoming their people home. 3 months after the humans left, the first real problems started to appear. They began small, easy to ignore, easy to explain away as coincidence or bad luck. But they kept growing. On RN7, the irrigation systems started failing. The automated pumps that moved water from the underground aquifers to the fields began shutting down randomly. The Aeronite engineers tried to fix them, following the manuals that Suna had left behind. The manuals were clear and well written, but they assumed a basic understanding of Earth engineering principles that the Aeronites didn't have. Tak, the old farmer, contacted the council and requested assistance. The council sent a team of Velkari agricultural engineers. They were competent professionals with centuries of combined experience. They looked at the irrigation systems and nodded confidently. They could fix this. 6 weeks later, 2 entire regions experienced complete harvest failure. The Velkari engineers had made modifications to the systems based on their own understanding of how irrigation should work, but human systems were designed differently, with different assumptions about water pressure, soil composition, and energy distribution. The modifications had cascading effects that the Velkari didn't anticipate. The crops withered in the fields. RN7 had to import food for the first time in 8 years. The cost was devastating to their economy. Tak sent another message to the council. More desperate this time. Could they contact Earth? Could they ask the humans to come back, just for a little while, just to fix what was broken? The council sent a formal diplomatic note to Earth. It was polite, but firm. The situation on RN7 required expertise that only human agricultural specialists possessed. Would Earth be willing to send a team? Earth's response came back within 2 days. We appreciate the Council's confidence in our agricultural programs. However, our specialists are currently engaged in projects within human space and the independent colonies we serve. As Earth is no longer a full member of the Galactic Council, we must prioritize our commitments to our current partners. We wish the Council success in resolving this matter. The response was professional and courteous. It was also absolutely final. On Velmar Station, the economy was collapsing. Trade revenue had dropped by 42%. Station Administrator Feltok spent his days trying to understand what had gone wrong. The station still had merchants from dozens of species. Ships still docked every day. But something fundamental had changed. It took him weeks to figure it out. The humans hadn't just been participants in Velmar's economy. They had been the glue holding it together. A Velkari merchant wouldn't trade directly with a Trin because of a war 300 years ago. A Halcyon wouldn't do business with a Dendari because of religious differences. A dozen other species had a dozen other grudges and prejudices and communication barriers. The humans had bridged all those gaps. They traded with everyone. And in doing so, they had created networks of exchange that crossed old boundaries. A Velkari merchant would sell to a human trader, who would then sell to a Trin. Neither Velkari nor Trin felt like they were betraying their principles, and both made profit. Without the humans, those networks collapsed. The old prejudices resurfaced. Trade slowed. Merchants started leaving Velmar for other stations. Feltok watched his beautiful, thriving trade hub slowly dying, and had no idea how to stop it. On the frontier, the pirates came back. The Korthak Syndicate, emboldened by the absence of human patrol ships, launched raids across 6 sectors. They hit cargo vessels, mining stations, and small colonies. The Council's 3rd Defense Fleet scrambled to respond, but they were stretched too thin. Fleet Commander Dreven looked at his tactical display and felt a headache building behind his eyes. Before the humans left, he had commanded 43 ships spread across 16 patrol zones. The coverage had been good, not perfect, but good enough that pirates thought twice before operating in Council space. Now he had 27 ships covering the same territory. The humans had taken 16 vessels with them when they left. 16 ships didn't sound like much, but they had been positioned perfectly, covering the gaps between the main fleet elements. The human captains had an almost supernatural ability to predict where pirates would strike next. Taeyang and his fellow human captains had shared their patrol data freely, had coordinated their movements with the rest of the fleet seamlessly. Without them, there were holes in the coverage. The pirates found those holes quickly. A colony called New Tharsis was hit hard. The raiders came in fast, disabled the colony's shields, and looted their supply warehouses. 23 colonists were dead. The colony's economy was destroyed. Drevin wrote the incident report himself. He noted that if the UESS Horizon's shield had still been on patrol in that sector, they would have detected the raiders and intercepted them before they reached New Tharsis. He sent the report to Council Command and received a response telling him to make do with available resources. In the council chambers, representatives started asking quiet questions. Councillor Venara, of the Dendari, met with several other junior council members. They reviewed the reports coming in from across council space. The pattern was undeniable. Things were falling apart. She approached the Velkari delegation carefully. Venara was old even by Dendari standards, with wisdom earned through centuries of service. She chose her words with care. High Minister Kelvar, I wonder if we might discuss the situation with the humans. Perhaps we acted hastily. Perhaps we should extend an invitation for them to return. Kelvar looked at her with his golden eyes and laughed. It was not a kind sound. Counselor, you worry too much. The humans are throwing a tantrum because their feelings were hurt. They will come back when they realize they need us more than we need them. Give it time. But the reports from Aaron 7, from Velmar Station, from the frontier zones, are temporary problems that we are addressing. The Council has stood for 1,000 years. It has overcome far greater challenges than the absence of one young species. Have faith, Counselor. Venara left the meeting unsatisfied. She pulled the reports again that night, reading through them carefully. Crop failures, trade collapse, pirate raids, medical supply shortages in 3 sectors, a diplomatic crisis between the Trin and the Halcyon that was escalating because there was no neutral mediator available. Every problem was something that humans had been handling, so quietly and efficiently that nobody had noticed they were doing it. She started making calls to other counselors, the ones who hadn't supported the vote against humanity. There were 12 of them. Together, they began compiling a comprehensive report on the impact of the human withdrawal. The numbers were worse than she had feared. Economic output across council space was down 31%. Security incidents were up 412%. There were 17 active humanitarian crises that would have been routine with human medical teams and supply ships. 2 new wars were brewing. The Krethak and the Solvary were both claiming rights to a resource-rich asteroid field. Normally, human diplomats would have mediated. They were good at that, finding solutions that both sides could accept. Without them, both species were mobilizing their fleets. Venera presented the report to the full council. She stood at the central podium and spoke for 20 minutes, laying out the facts clearly and without emotion. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Korthen, the speaker, finally spoke. These are concerning trends, Counselor. But surely you are not suggesting that all of these problems are solely because the humans left? I am suggesting exactly that, Speaker. The data supports no other conclusion. Kelvar stood. The Counselor is being dramatic. Yes, there have been some difficulties, but these are natural adjustments. The Council will adapt. How many more colonies must be raided? Venara asked. How many more worlds must face famine? How many must die before we admit we made a mistake? The debate went on for hours. In the end, nothing was decided. The Council authorized a study group to further examine the situation. It would report back in 6 months. 6 months seemed like a very long time. The plague started on a Dendari colony world called Thresh. It was a small outbreak at first, confined to a single city. The local doctors recognized it immediately because they had seen it before, 8 years ago, before it had been completely eradicated by a human medical team. The virus attacked the Dendari respiratory system, multiplying rapidly in the lung tissue. Without treatment, the mortality rate was close to 70%. With treatment, it was less than 5%. But that treatment had been developed by humans, specifically by a doctor named Hyun and his team from the University of Seoul Medical Center. The Dendari governor sent an emergency message to Council Medical Services, requesting immediate assistance. She specifically asked for Dr. Hyun. He had worked on Thresh during the previous outbreak. He knew the virus. He knew how to stop it. Council Medical Services forwarded the request to Earth. The response came back within 48 hours. It was polite, expressing sympathy for the situation, but firm in its refusal. Dr. Hyun was currently engaged in medical research within human space. Earth was no longer a full member of the Council, and therefore could not commit resources to Council territories. The message ended with a formal expression of hope that the Dendari would overcome this challenge. The Dendari tried to produce the treatment themselves, using the formulas that Dr. Hyun had published years ago, but the virus had mutated. The old treatment was only partially effective. They needed someone who understood the fundamental biology, who could adapt the treatment to the new strain. They didn't have anyone like that. Dr. Hyun had trained some Dendari doctors, but they had learned specific techniques, not the underlying principles. They knew how to apply the treatment, not how to develop new ones. The plague spread. 1 city became 5. 5 became 20. The Dendari government imposed quarantines, but the virus was airborne and highly contagious. It spread faster than they could contain it. The council sent medical teams from other species. The Valkyrie came with their advanced pharmaceutical knowledge. The Halcyon brought sophisticated diagnostic equipment, but none of them specialized in Dendari biology the way the human doctors had. They tried their best, but their best wasn't enough. The death toll climbed. 1 million. 5 million. 10 million. Counselor Venara watched the reports with a sick feeling in her stomach. Her own daughter lived on Thresh with her family. Every day, Venara waited for news, dreading the message that might come. The message came on a Tuesday morning. Her daughter and 2 of her grandchildren were dead. The 3rd grandchild was in critical condition. Venara sat in her office for a long time after reading the message. Then she started making calls. She demanded an emergency council session. She didn't ask. She demanded. As a senior counselor who had served for 300 years, she had the right. The session was scheduled for the next day. Venara stood at the central podium. Her people didn't cry the way humans did, but everyone in the chamber could see her grief. It was in the way she stood, in the tone of her voice, in the careful control of her words. 17 million Dendari are dead, she said. 17 million. They died because we were too proud to admit we made a mistake. They died because we believed we could do without the humans. They died because of this council's arrogance. Kelvar tried to interrupt. Venara's voice rose, cutting him off. You will let me speak, High Minister. You will listen to what your policies have cost. She presented the full accounting. Not just the Dendari plague, but everything. Arn 7 was in famine, with starvation spreading across 2 continents. Velmar Station had lost 60% of its trade revenue and was facing economic collapse. Pirate raids had increased by 412%. The frontier zones were becoming lawless territories where council authority meant nothing. 3 small wars had broken out because there were no mediators available. The Krethak and Solveri were killing each other over an asteroid field. The Thanari and Quarth were fighting a border war that had started over a simple misunderstanding. The kind of thing human diplomats used to resolve before breakfast. And where are the humans? Venara asked. What are they doing while we tear ourselves apart? She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed the region of space controlled by humanity and their allies. The display was based on Council intelligence reports. The humans had been busy. In the 6 months since they left, they had established new trade partnerships with 17 independent species, none of whom were Council members. Their colony count had increased from 43 to 87. They had formed a mutual defense pact with 7 other civilizations, creating a security alliance that rivaled the Council's own forces. Their economy was booming, trade was up, their colonies were thriving. Intelligence reports showed that they were accepting refugees from Council space, people fleeing the instability and violence. They are not suffering, Venara said quietly. They are not begging to come back. They don't need us anymore. Perhaps they never did. The chamber was absolutely silent. Even Kelvar had nothing to say. Kor then, the speaker, finally spoke. His crystalline voice was subdued. What do you propose? Counselor, we contact Earth. We apologize. We ask them to return, and we restore their full membership status immediately. We beg, if we have to. The Council does not beg, Kelvar said reflexively. Venera turned to look at him directly. Then the Council will continue to watch its citizens die. Is your pride worth 17 million lives, High Minister? Is it worth the millions more who will die if this continues? The vote was called. This time, it was not close. 743 representatives voted to send a delegation to Earth to negotiate humanity's return. Only 37 voted against. Kelvar was one of them. The delegation was assembled carefully. Venara was chosen to lead it, along with 5 other senior counselors representing the major species. Kor then himself decided to join them, an unprecedented move that showed how serious the situation had become. They sent a message to Earth requesting a meeting. The response was surprisingly fast. Earth agreed to receive them at Luna Station within 1 week. The delegation traveled to the Sol system in a ship provided by the Council. As they approached Earth's moon, they could see the changes. New orbital facilities had been constructed. The traffic was incredible, ships from dozens of species that they didn't recognize. Earth's sphere of influence had grown enormously. They docked at Luna Station and were escorted to a conference room with a window overlooking Earth. The planet hung in the black sky, blue and white and beautiful. Venara had never been to Earth before. She found it strangely moving. Ambassador Jiwan entered the room. She looked the same as she had 6 months ago when she walked out of the Council chamber. Same dark blue suit. Same practical hairstyle. Same calm expression. She greeted each delegate formally, shaking hands in the human way. Then, she invited them to sit. A human aide served tea, a ritual that seemed oddly domestic given the stakes of the meeting. Kor then spoke first. Ambassador Jiwan, the Council wishes to express its deepest regrets for the decision made 6 months ago. We recognize now that it was a mistake, one that has cost many lives. We have come to formally invite humanity to return to full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges restored. Jiwan listened carefully. She sipped her tea. She looked out the window at Earth. Speaker Kor then. I appreciate the apology, and I believe it is sincere. But you must understand what happened when we left that chamber 6 months ago. She turned to face them directly. We were not playing a game. We were not posturing for political advantage. You told us, clearly, that we were not valued as full partners. So we accepted that judgment and we moved on. Venara leaned forward. Ambassador, we were wrong. We see that now. Please, come back. The Council needs you. Jiwan's expression softened slightly. Counselor Venara, I am sorry for your loss. Truly. If we had been members of the Council, Dr. Hyun would have been on Thresh within hours of the first outbreak. But we weren't members. We aren't members. And that changes everything. Jiwan stood up and walked to the window. Earth filled the view, slowly rotating beneath them. She was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. Let me tell you what happened after we left, she said. We came home. 53 diplomats, 16 military vessels, Hundreds of researchers and doctors and engineers and teachers. They all came home wondering if they had failed somehow, wondering what they had done wrong. She turned to face the delegation. And then something interesting happened. Species that had never approached us before started making contact. Independent colonies that the Council had ignored. Smaller civilizations that felt overlooked by the major powers. They reached out to us. Jiwan returned to her seat. They said they had watched us for years. They saw how we worked with others. How we solved problems. How we treated our partners with respect. They wanted to work with us. Not under us, not for us. With us. Kor then shifted in his seat, his crystalline body chiming softly. Surely humanity can maintain those relationships while also returning to the Council. We are not asking you to abandon your new allies. You're asking us to split our attention and our resources? Jiwan replied. To maintain commitments in Council space, while also honoring our agreements with our new partners. But why would we do that? What does the Council offer that makes it worth the effort? One of the other delegates, a Trin named Kelvar, spoke up. The Council offers stability, security, access to the largest trade network in the galaxy. These are significant benefits. Benefits we had for 40 years, Jiwan said, until the Council decided we didn't deserve them. Forgive me for being skeptical about their permanence. Venara took a deep breath. Ambassador, what would it take? What do you need from us to make this right? Jiwan considered the question carefully. Counselor, I don't think you can make it right. The damage is done. You showed us that Council membership is conditional, that it can be revoked on a whim because some species feel threatened by our success. That's a valuable lesson. She stood again, pacing slowly. We have new partners now. We have mutual defense pacts, trade agreements, research collaborations. We have commitments to species that accepted us as equals from the start, without requiring a probationary period or second-guessing our worth. And those partners have delivered for us. When we needed raw materials for construction, the Marathi provided them without demanding concessions. When we needed help establishing new colonies, the Vornis sent their best terraforming experts. When pirates threatened our trade routes, the Kelsh fleet was there within hours. Jiwan sat back down. We have built something good here. Something based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Why would we risk that to return to an organization that has already shown it doesn't value us? The room was silent. Kelvar, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. His golden eyes were dim, his silver fur dulled. Ambassador, I was one of the primary sponsors of the motion against humanity. I believed the humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. I thought we needed to control you, to guide you. He paused, struggling with the words. I was wrong. I see that now. The chaos across Council space, the deaths, the economic collapse, all of it is my fault. I take responsibility for my mistakes. I am asking you, personally, to forgive me and to give the Council another chance. Jiwan looked at him for a long moment. High Minister, I appreciate your honesty, but forgiveness doesn't fix the structural problems. You were wrong, yes, but you were able to be wrong because the system allowed it. What happens in 10 years, or 50, when another species decides humans are too influential? Will we be voted out again? Kor then spoke. We could change the rules, make it harder to remove a member species, require a supermajority, or unanimous consent. You could, Jiwan agreed. But rules can be changed back. The fundamental problem remains. The Council operates on the assumption that older species know better, that younger species need to be managed. We reject that assumption. She stood and walked to a display panel on the wall. She activated it, showing a star map of human space and its allies. This is what we've built in 6 months. 17 new partners, 44 new colonies. A security alliance that has prevented 12 potential conflicts through mediation and deterrence. An economic zone where trade has increased by 63%. Monically, and we did it without the Council's help. Without its bureaucracy, its politics, its endless debates about which species deserves a voice and which doesn't. We just worked with people who wanted to work with us. Venara's voice was small. So, there is nothing we can say? Nothing we can offer? Oh. Anvermender. In Reagers all. And Donners all. And both climb. Jiwan's expression softened. Counselor, I am not saying we will never work with the Council again. We can maintain diplomatic relations. We can engage in trade, where it benefits both sides. If there is an emergency that threatens everyone, we can coordinate our response. But membership? Putting ourselves back under the Council's authority, accepting that our status can be revoked whenever it becomes politically convenient? No. That door has closed. She sat down across from Venera. You taught us something important. You taught us that we don't need the Council. That we can thrive on our own. That we can build our own alliances based on our own values. That is a lesson we will not forget. The delegation sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting negotiations, compromises, perhaps some difficult concessions they would have to make. They had not expected a simple, final refusal. Kor then made one last attempt. If not full membership, then perhaps an associate status? Observer status? Some formal connection? To what end? Jiwan asked. So the Council can claim humanity is still within its sphere of influence? So you can feel better about the situation? We have moved on. Speaker. I suggest the Council do the same. The meeting ended shortly after. Jiwan showed them to their ship personally, maintaining perfect diplomatic courtesy. As they prepared to depart, Venara took her hand. I am sorry, the old Dendari said quietly. For everything we cost you. For everything we cost ourselves. Jiwan squeezed her hand gently. I know, Counselor. I hope the Council learns from this. I hope you find a way to fix what's broken. The delegation's ship left Luna Station and began the long journey back to Council space. Inside, the delegates sat in silence, processing what had happened. Finally, Kelvar spoke. She actually said no. She just said no. And meant it. They don't need us, Kor then said quietly. That's what I didn't understand before. We thought the humans needed the Council, more than the Council needed the humans. We were wrong. Venera looked out the viewport at the receding Earth. We had 40 years to treat them as valued partners. 40 years to build trust. To show them they belonged. Instead, we spent that time looking for reasons to doubt them, to control them, to keep them in their place. And now they have a better place to be, she finished. Back on Luna Station, Jiwan filed her report to Earth's government. The Council's delegation had come and gone. They had offered full restoration of membership. The offer had been declined. Over the next year, 2 more species followed humanity's example. The Marathi and the Vornis, both independent colonies that had partnered with Earth, formally withdrew from the Council and joined the growing alliance centered on human space. Others were considering the same move. The Galactic Council continued to exist. It still had over 800 member species. It still controlled vast territories and enormous resources. But everyone knew the truth now. The organization that had believed itself indispensable had learned, too late, that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. And once lost, it is almost impossible to regain. Earth thrived. The alliance grew stronger. New species joined regularly, attracted by the promise of genuine partnership and mutual respect. Dr. Hyun expanded his medical research program, training doctors from a dozen different species in human medical techniques. Suna returned to agricultural research, helping new worlds develop sustainable farming systems. Captain Taeyang and his crew patrolled the borders of the alliance, keeping their partners safe. And in the council chambers, Venara stood at the central podium and proposed sweeping reforms, changes to how membership worked, how decisions were made, how younger species were treated. Some of the reforms passed, some didn't. Progress was slow and painful, but it was progress. and it had cost 17 million Dendari lives, countless other deaths, and the loss of humanity's trust to achieve it. Kor then, in his private moments, thought about that meeting on Luna Station. He thought about Jiwan's calm refusal, her clear explanation of why they would not return. He had served as speaker for 60 years and had presided over hundreds of historic moments. But he knew that this was the moment he would be remembered for. The moment the council learned that power without respect is meaningless. The moment humanity walked away and didn't look back. And the moment the galaxy realized that sometimes the youngest voice in the room is the wisest one.